If I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of The School Without Walls. I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. This program is designed primarily to reach the African American audience with emphasis on the African American male. We are encouraging the community to work with us in having the students to speak the best English that they can. We call it standard English. That does not mean that you don't speak your mother tongue when you're with the group, but you got to know how to be bilingual. Also, we are talking about African American history and culture. We want to go beyond the month of February. So we're asking every person of leadership in this community or under the sound of my voice to encourage your constituents to keep teaching the African American history and culture. How to dress for success. We want you to learn to dress like Mr. Jack Foster. He knows how to dress for success. He'll be coming up next, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Also, respect authority. We want to learn to respect authority. Now, my guest today is the Reverend James Lamb, man who has authored several books. Today, we're going to talk about the book it's called, what is it?
The Revelation of Power.
The Revelation of Power. Reverend Lamb, would you define power for us, please? The revelation of power in a few words.
Well, power is the ability to define someone and have them accept your definition as reality.
That's some power, isn't it?
That's power.
Yes, whether they like it or not. You said one way of defining power is having someone else to behave, I'm paraphrasing, like you want them to behave. You have the power to have them do that, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Anything you want to say about this book? I'd like you to tell us about the book you've written, or maybe what inspired you to write the book, and then talk about the book.
Well, the book its inception, its creation, was from the idea that I was creating my own life.
And that's very true.
When I was looking at the conditions of my life, I realized that I was the one creating the chaos that I found myself in.
Very true.
And if I had created that chaos, then I certainly could create something different. And it became a pursuit, actually, of myself, an investigation of myself.
Excellent.
Man, know thyself, written in the Egyptian temples. And it was a study of how I actually created my life. That was the beginning of the book, The Revelation of Power.
I noticed you said, man, know thyself, and you mentioned it was evidently recorded in the Egyptian temples, right?
Yes, sir.
In other words, Shakespeare didn't come up with that originally when he said, to thine own self thou shalt be true, and that shall follow as the night follow the day. He was saying the same thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought Shakespeare started that.
No, you can find, if you trace back the history of the Bible and many other scientific and spiritual phenomena, you will find its inception, its creation, its beginning comes out of Kemet, which is Egypt. The name was changed.
Before there was a name called Egypt, that land was called Kemet. Am I correct? Right.
That means the land of the blacks. The hieroglyphic symbol for Kemet was a burnt piece of wood, so there was no mistake that they considered themselves black.
That is a fact. That is a historical fact. All right. Anything about your book and details you want to talk about, you may do so.
Well, the Revelation of Power gives you the opportunity to investigate yourself. It goes into a scientific and spiritual awareness of your spiritual power and your mental capacity. One of the important things about mental capacity is everything around you was once a thought before it became physical reality.
So
things move from the invisible to the visible. So if you're not satisfied with the results that you're getting out of your life, you need to go back and look at the inception or the creation of your thoughts and how they're moving from your imagination into the vision that you're creating your own life with. There's an overarching idea that I use in the Power to Change and the Revelation of Power, which is thinking, action, behavior, and consequences. And if the consequences of what you're getting in your life is not what you want, then you need to go back and look at your actions and your behavior. Your continued action over time creates your behavior or your habit force. And if these things are creating chaos in your life, then you need to go back and recreate or have your mind readjusted to a more positive, powerful mind. And in the book, I refer to the mind of Christ, which is the anointed mind, the mind that's been touched by the power of God that enables you to have a mind that is a mind of victory and overcoming all obstacles. So the book goes through all of the creative areas of the mind. It also goes into the areas of the subconscious. It shows you how to master your own emotions so that you remain calm and at peace, so that you could deal with every problem that comes your way. Every problem is meant to be solved. Every issue in your life is meant to be overcome. Everything that you face is meant to strengthen you. That's where you get the scripture that says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. You become more powerful as you learn to manipulate and maneuver your way through life in a positive way, so that what comes out of you comes back to you multiplied, and you begin to get the results that you're looking for in your life. You begin to use karma, you begin to use sowing and reaping to your benefit and to your advantage. But if you don't know how to use the tools of your brain, which is a servo mechanism, it is meant to serve you and serve up information to help you maneuver your way through life. If you haven't rearranged your mind and use your brain in that fashion, then you continue to produce the chaos and consequences that are adverse to what you really want.
Boy, that's deep. That's profound. That's something. We're going to have to take a break in a few minutes, but you mentioned 4 things. I want you to think on those. When we come back, we'll discuss the square. See, balance. See, this comes from the idea of the etymology of words in numerology of theology. That 4 is very key, the way you dealt with it. I like that. Randy, it's about break time. We'll be back in just a second.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18? 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of finding someone to invest in his vision? 1 in 4.5 million. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. My guest today is the Reverend James Lamb, who is discussing one of his books. I believe this is the second one. Is it the third?
This is the second book.
This
I'm
is
working on the third book
Second
now.
book, The Revelation of Power. And I would give a definition of power. He gave a definition of power. Power is the ability to get something done. That's another definition. He said the power to control or whatever, that's the same thing. We all desire power, and so if we are speaking educationally, we want to have the power to be able, as African American males, to be respected, make a living, and that takes systematic training and education. You mentioned 4 things, and I thought about something that I have learned that, for example, I'm trying to recall a lecture I did on the art of being successful. I deal with 4 things. First, you must have the knowledge. Whatever it is you're working, you got to have the information. Second stage, you must understand it. Then the third phase, after having the knowledge, understanding the knowledge, you got to apply it. Otherwise, you don't use it, you will lose it. That's the Trinity, right there. That's the 360 degree that we find in everything. Then we have the 4, which is a square. You have to learn to analyze what you've done. You see, you got get the knowledge, understand it so you won't mislead somebody about it. Then you got to use it. I call it application. And then the third one, I said analysis. You need to analyze it. You got to be able to analyze things. Now, could you briefly go back over the 4 things you mentioned so profoundly? I don't remember what they were, but I liked what you were saying. There was 4 things you just said on the other side of the break. Do you remember?
The 4 things are the overarching characteristics of how to govern your mind.
One
thinking.
is thinking.
Out of thinking comes your action.
Action.
Your repeated action over time creates your behavior.
Application.
And your behavior produces consequences.
All right, consequences. That's where we go into the analysis. That's excellent. All right, you may continue with your book. That was excellent. Anything else you want to tell us about your book?
Well, yes, I've developed it into a PowerPoint presentation. Initially, it was accepted by the Arkansas Department of Corrections, and it was taught throughout all of the substance abuse facilities that we have throughout the state. I teach it at the Varner Unit, a PowerPoint presentation based on the power to change and the revelation of power. I also do volunteer work at the women's prison. And there's amazing results that come from having the students understand themselves. One of the reasons why I created the revelation of power and the power to change was the chaotic nature of my life. Even though I had been in the church, I still had a measure of chaos in my life. And I found out the church addresses a number of different subjects. But those subjects that are pertinent to an individual turning their life around, I found there was more information that could be added to that central focus.
Right.
And that is the focus that's needed for an individual to actually turn their lives around and become successful. So my focus has been away from the kind of esoteric information and the kind of futuristic, eschatological information which deal with future events, to the primary focus on individuals and how to reshape and turn their lives around and be successful. I found these laws not only apply to individuals, but they apply to a community.
Right.
What is wrong with our community, if you look at the results we're getting, then there's something wrong with the way we're thinking, acting, and behaving to get these consequences. And if you go back to the thinking process, you'll find out that most of the thinking was already done for us by others who said it in an educational forum. So that when we learn about ourselves, we're not really learning about ourselves in the educational forum. We're learning about other people who have become great and other people that we're taught to look up to. Very seldom do you find African American students who are cognizant and very aware of their own glorious history and what we have contributed to the world, which gives you good self-esteem. And our young people many times are lacking in good self-esteem. So the next book that I'm dealing with goes into more African history, more of what we have contributed to the world. But first you have to correct the way you think, because if you don't correct the way you think, the consequences of the way you think are going to continue to be catastrophic.
Gotta be. There's a scripture that supports that. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That is very profound. Again, we've got to change our way of thinking. It reminds me of the old tradition in the church as being converted, born again. That is really what they were talking about. That's what Christ was talking about, change your thinking. You cannot be born and enter again into your mother's womb, right? But he wanted you to change your thinking. So I'm sure you know this, much of what Christ espoused is not being taught in the Christian church. You see? Exactly what you're talking about is what Christ was all about.
Well,
as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Absolutely.
You must be born again here.
That's the actual beginning of changing your life, is repentance, which really means turning yourself around, turning your mind around. walking in a different direction.
Right.
Much of the scientific approach to life, such as knowing how gravity works within us, or magnetism, or attraction, knowing how these things work inside of us, because we are a part of the universe, and the universe has gravity in it. We therefore have attraction, and a number of other scientific phenomena that operates inside of us. By teaching about stories and not the investigation of the human person himself or herself, we've lost a lot of the scientific material. If you go back to Kemet, the priests were the ones who knew about science and religion.
Definitely.
The two are not separate.
Right, and medicine.
And medicine.
Right.
So we, many times in the church, have reduced the message to stories without the scientific investigation of how we actually function and work in the world. So the power to change shows you how to use your thinking capacity, your vision, and your imagination, which allows you to look forward. It works on the basis of the knowledge that you already have and how you need to increase the knowledge or even change the knowledge that you're working from. It shows you how to utilize your memory. It shows you how to use your conscience effectively. And it shows you how to use the heart, the center of you. All of these are creative areas within you. If you don't monitor and master each of these areas, then you will continue to carry out the definition of other people, because in many ways, humans are very much like computers.
Definitely.
With a hard drive similar to our subconscious. And many times when we come into the world, our subconscious has been programmed by the language that affects us. Since we are vibrations, everything in the universe vibrates. What you're listening to is the vibration of my vocal cords.
Right, we're going to have to cut it on that. We'll be back and continue that in just a few minutes.
All right.
Man, that's profound.
But it would be safe to keep your distance until there's no secret that makes you smile. Reliable sources say that chicken soup has found their way out of this dangerous, but they are returned.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
All in together now. We can make it better now. Come on, can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
We rope it up,
cause we know how to jump.
we roll it out,
Cause we know how to skate.
we'll cut it down,
Cause we know what to eat.
we'll swap it out.
We eat healthy stuff.
Can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
Can we do it?
Just moving a little and eating better every day can help make you and your child healthier. Search We Can to find doable tips and activities that you can use every day.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. If I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again now.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Anthony O. Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. My guest today is the Reverend James Lamb. We're discussing his book, The Revelation of Power. Before we continue, I want the Alumni Association, whom I'm told that watches this program so much, I want you to get this book. Tell them how you can get this book. Tell them, you told me something about it. How do we go online and get your book?
You can get The Revelation of Power or The Power to Change either on Amazon.com by putting in my name and the title of the book. You can get it at BarnesandNoble.com. You can also get it on...
Let's give them just one, okay? You got Barnes
and Noble.
And Noble.com.
And Amazon.com.
That's two different ones, right? BarnesandNoble.com is
Yes.
one, right? Let's just give them that one because we don't want to confuse anybody. Bondsandnoble.com.
If I might, on Amazon.com, you can get the book if you have a Kindle for $2.99.
Okay. Amazon.com is one place you can get this book. Amazon.com. Okay. And I want you to get this book, please, not only the alumni, but anybody who's listening to me, who's in leadership. You need this book, and you need to work with this book. I encourage you to invite Reverend Lamb to come and speak to your groups because he has the message. And as I said to him on the other side of the break, he's just taken what Christ intended and put it into words for the present age, in which the church is not doing. Those of us who know theology realize that the persons who established the Christian church left out so much of what Christ intended and established a political system, right? You're on the mark. I thank God is with you on this. We have about 8 more minutes, do we not, Randy? We have about 8 more minutes, so let's continue. You were talking, and I sort of cut you off. Could you take up where you stopped? I don't remember exactly.
We were talking about vibrations,
vibrations.
And I explain in the book about vibrations. Actually, those who are watching this broadcast, you're listening to the vibrations of my vocal cords, and it's being shaped, the words are being shaped by my mouth and my palate and tongue, and it strikes your eardrum and this anvil and stirrup, and those messages are translated by your brain into electrical chemical energy, which enables you to understand what I'm saying. But really what's being transmitted between us is vibrations. Everything in the universe is both vibrations and energy and power and potential. So the vibrations of how you think is what needs to be changed. You need to be able to elevate your thinking capacity to a higher level so that you're both speaking and listening at a higher level, which is a positive level, which enables you to have more effective control over your life. One of the reasons why individuals are locked into a certain level of living is because you're locked into the language that holds you at that level. Any professional has a certain level in their language. A plumber, a lawyer, a doctor, they have a specific language that they relate to one another with that enables them to effectively act at that level. What we need to do is raise the level of vibrations or raise the level of our knowledge so that we have an effective communication base that raises us from a lower level, which is street knowledge, and the knowledge of alcohol, drugs, and instant gratification and what feels good, to a higher level of being able to see into the future and project your vibrations in through your vision and your imagination to effectively draw to you through gravity and through attraction the life that you really want. I rose from a level of being a drug addict and an alcoholic, living in a car with 3 other men, to going to school and being around professors and people of great intellect and knowledge who inspired me to change my life. But the effective change came when I realized if I had created chaos, that I could create something different. And that passion has not gone from me. That passion has been accelerated to the point where I give away, I don't know how many books. I have a radio broadcast, and anybody who listens to the broadcast that's incarcerated, they can write me and I'll send them a free book. And I have sent books to prisons all over the state, even out of the state. And I've gotten letters and poems and all kinds of information back how this book has effectively changed their lives, how it's motivated them to do different things with their life. Even in the prison where I work, the Varna prison, there are young men who come up to me all the time and say, I've read your book. When I walk down the hallway, I see men holding up the book, and they're telling me how it's changed their lives. We've even started study programs inside the prison. We're trying to turn the prison into an educational system where men will begin to educate themselves so that as they come into the prison, they will educate themselves and be able to go back out into the community and be able to work in the community as effective agents of change. But it starts inside you. It starts inside your mind.
Definitely. We have only perhaps about 2 minutes. Let me ask you this. You mentioned you lived in a car with 3 other men. What caused you to get out of that car and turn in this direction? Something caused that. What was it? What did you hear? Who spoke to you?
Well, it was actually the length of that story was I had tried to kill myself at some point, and I didn't effectively do it. And I called my brother, and he took me to the hospital.
Okay.
And there was a gentleman there in the hospital who asked me about my life, and he sat down and he began to doodle on a piece of paper. And he showed me on this piece of paper where I was able to rise several times from a level of chaos in my life, but I didn't know how to sustain it. And he suggested I go into a long-term program. I went into that program and stayed there for 4 years and 10 months. And I went back to college. I went to seminary. I went to UC Berkeley. But what really churned my life around was when I finally accepted the fact that I was creating my own chaos.
And something had to cause you. I'm trying to help somebody out there. What caused you to realize that? Something caused that. Do you have any idea? When you realized that you were creating, you read something or somebody told you? How did you get to that position? I know you're right, because I understand that. We all create what we are. We are creators made in the image of the Creator. We have 1 minute.
Well, it was actually that moment, that epiphanous moment, that realization, because I never really thought about it in depth and the profundity of that moment, that it wasn't whoever the people were that I was blaming.
Almost like a spiritual revelation to you, I would think then.
Absolutely.
Like a spiritual revelation cleared you.
Well, when I was in the church, I thought God was supposed to turn my life around. You know, I thought other people were supposed to help me turn my life around. Even though it seems simplistic to say I was creating my own chaos and therefore I could, turn it around and create something different, it required an investigation, a more deep and profound look at myself, not the world, but what was going on inside me.
Right.
Therefore, our community, it is not what's happening to us from the outside. We need to look inside about what's going wrong, because what's happening to us doesn't affect us as much as what we're doing to ourselves.
Right, inwardly. Well, thank you. That's a good one, I think, to end on. Thank you again, Reverend, and I hope you'll continue to do the great work.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hobbs. I have so much respect for you.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.